You're not even real family. You're just the mistake my brother made 26 years ago. My Aunt Gloria said this to me at my father's funeral, 3 feet from his open casket, while 200 guests pretended not to hear. She was wearing a black Dior dress and my grandmother, best pearls my father had promised to me on my 18th birthday. What Gloria didn't know was that I had spent the last 6 months preparing for exactly this moment. And the documents in my purse were about to destroy everything she thought she'd already won. My name is Savannah Blake, and 6 months ago, I was a 26-year-old veterinary technician living in a 1-bedroom apartment in Austin, Texas. I drove a 12-year-old Honda Civic. I had $37,000 in student loan debt. I bought my coffee at gas stations because Starbucks felt like a luxury. I was also, according to my father's will, the sole heir to the Blake family holdings, a commercial real estate portfolio worth approximately $94 million. The problem was that half my family had spent the last 2 decades making sure I'd never see a penny of it. Let me explain. My father, William Blake, was the youngest of 3 siblings born to Harold and Catherine Blake, founders of Blake Development Corporation. Harold started with a single strip mall in 1962 and built an empire through 60 years of strategic acquisitions, conservative management, and an almost supernatural ability to predict which neighborhoods would gentrify. When Harold died in 2019, he left everything to Catherine. When Catherine died 18 months later, her will divided the estate equally among her 3 children, Gloria, Raymond, and my father William. Except my father had committed an unforgivable sin in the Blake family hierarchy. He'd married my mother. My mother, Daniela Reyes, was a housekeeper at the Blake family estate in Highland Park. She was 19 years old, undocumented, and, according to my grandmother, utterly unsuitable for a Blake. My father didn't care. He'd fallen in love with her the summer after his freshman year at SMU, when she was cleaning his childhood bedroom and he was supposed to be studying for his economics retake. They dated in secret for 2 years. When Daniela got pregnant with me, William did the only thing that made sense to him: he married her. Catherine Blake didn't speak to her youngest son for 3 years. Gloria and Raymond, 15 and 12 years older than William, respectively, made their positions clear from the start. They called my mother the help. They called me the accident. They made sure every family gathering included at least one pointed comment about gold diggers and anchor babies. My mother endured it for my father's sake. She learned English, got her GED, became a citizen, built a small catering business that she ran out of our kitchen. She never complained, never fought back, never gave the Blake family any ammunition. She died of ovarian cancer when I was 17. My father never recovered. For the next 9 years, he threw himself into the family business, working 80-hour weeks, generating more profit than his siblings combined. Gloria handled client relations from her mansion in Preston Hollow, which mostly meant hosting charity galas. Raymond managed the investment portfolio, which mostly meant losing money on speculative ventures that his father would have rejected instantly. William did the actual work. William closed the deals. William kept the Blake empire running while his siblings collected their dividends and complained about his lifestyle choices. Then, 6 months ago, William Blake collapsed at his desk from a massive heart attack. He was 51 years old. And I was suddenly the most hated person in Dallas. The will reading took place 2 weeks after the funeral, in the conference room of Mitchell & Associates, the law firm that had represented the Blake family for 4 decades. I sat on one side of the mahogany table. Gloria, Raymond, and their assorted spouses and adult children sat on the other. 11 people in total, all wearing black, all looking at me like I was something they'd scraped off the bottom of their designer shoes. Gregory Mitchell, the senior partner, cleared his throat and began reading. My father had been thorough. Specific bequests to charity. A trust fund for his alma mater. Generous gifts to longtime employees of Blake Development. And then the main event. To my daughter, Savannah Reyes Blake, I leave the entirety of my 1/3 share of Blake family holdings, including all real property, securities, and business interests therein. I further designate Savannah as my successor in all matters pertaining to the management and operation of Blake Development Corporation. The silence lasted approximately 4 seconds. Then Gloria started screaming. This is fraud. This is obviously fraud. She was on her feet, pointing at me across the table. That girl hasn't worked a day in her life. She knows nothing about real estate. William would never. Mrs. Hartwell, please, Gregory tried to interject. I want this will contested immediately. Undue influence. Mental incapacity. Whatever it takes. Gloria's face had gone an alarming shade of purple. My brother was clearly not in his right mind. That woman's daughter has been manipulating him for years. That woman, I said quietly, was my mother. Her name was Daniela. And she's been dead for 9 years. Gloria spun toward me. You don't get to speak. You don't get to sit there in your cheap dress and pretend you belong at this table. Your mother was a servant. You are a servant's daughter. And you will not steal what belongs to this family. I looked at her, really looked at her, for maybe the first time in my life without flinching. My father's share belongs to me now. That's not stealing. That's inheritance. We'll see about that. Gloria gathered her Hermes bag and stood. Raymond, we're leaving. I'll have our lawyers file the contest by end of business tomorrow. She paused at the door, looking back at me with undisguised contempt. Enjoy your moment, sweetheart. It won't last. She was right about one thing. I didn't know anything about real estate. But I knew how to learn. And I knew something else, something my father had told me during one of our last conversations, when he was already looking tired in ways I didn't want to acknowledge. Savannah, I need you to listen carefully. If something happens to me, Gloria and Raymond will try to take everything. They've been positioning themselves for years. They have allies on the board. They have lawyers who will say whatever they're paid to say. And they have absolutely no intention of sharing anything with you. Dad, nothing's going to happen. Let me finish. He'd grabbed my hand with surprising strength. I've been keeping records. Everything. Every questionable deal Raymond has made. Every company expense Gloria has charged for personal use. Every vote they've manipulated, every conflict of interest they've hidden. He pressed a key into my palm. Safe deposit box. First National. Don't tell anyone you have this. Don't access it until you need it. And when you do need it, don't hesitate. These people are not your family. They've made that clear your entire life. Don't let sentiment make you weak. I'd kept that key in my jewelry box for 2 years, hoping I'd never need it. The day after the will reading, I drove to First National Bank and opened box 7714. Inside, I found 6 flash drives, a leather journal filled with my father's handwriting, and a sealed envelope addressed to me. The envelope contained a letter and a business card. The letter said, Savannah, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and they're coming for you. The drives contain everything: financial records, internal communications, board meeting recordings. The journal explains what you're looking at. The card belongs to Victoria Chen. She's the best forensic accountant in Texas, and she owes me a favor. Call her before you do anything else. I love you. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you from them in person. Dad. I called Victoria Chen that afternoon. What Victoria found over the next 3 months was worse than even my father had suspected. Gloria and Raymond hadn't just been skimming from the company. They'd been systematically looting it for over a decade. Your aunt has been billing personal expenses to Blake Development since 2012, Victoria explained, spreading printouts across her conference table. We're talking about household staff salaries, private school tuition for her grandchildren, a complete renovation of her guest house, all categorized as client entertainment or property maintenance. How much? Just over $2 million. I stared at the numbers. And Raymond? Raymond's worse. Victoria pulled up another file. He's been steering contracts to companies owned by his college roommates, his wife's relatives, his golf buddies. The markup on these contracts averages about 40% above market rate. We're talking about systematic fraud totaling approximately $11 million over 15 years. They've been stealing from their own company. They've been stealing from their own father. From your grandmother. And now from you. Victoria leaned back in her chair. The question is, what do you want to do about it? I thought about my mother, who worked 16-hour days to build a catering business from nothing while the Blakes called her the help. I thought about my father, who'd given his life to a company his siblings treated like their personal piggy bank. I thought about every Christmas dinner where I'd been seated at the children's table until I was 22, every graduation Gloria had skipped, every birthday card that never arrived. I want them to know what it feels like, I said. To lose everything in public. Victoria smiled. It was not a warm smile. Then let me introduce you to some people. Over the next 2 months, Victoria connected me with a network I never knew existed: corporate attorneys who specialized in shareholder disputes, private investigators who could trace money through shell companies, and most importantly, disgruntled Blake Development employees who watched Gloria and Raymond's corruption for years and been too afraid to speak up. One of them was Janet Morrison, my father's executive assistant for the past 15 years. Your dad was a good man, Janet told me over coffee at a diner far from downtown Dallas, where no one from the Blake orbit would see us. He knew what his siblings were doing. It ate him up inside. But he didn't have majority control, and every time he tried to bring concerns to the board, Gloria and Raymond would shut him down. They had allies. They had leverage. What kind of leverage? Janet hesitated. Your father made a mistake when he was younger. Before he met your mother. Something Gloria never let him forget. She shook her head. It doesn't matter now. What matters is that he spent the last 5 years of his life building a case against them. Quietly. carefully. He knew that one day, someone would need that evidence. He knew it would be me. He hoped it wouldn't come to that. He hoped he'd have more time. Janet's eyes were wet. But yes. He prepared you as best he could, even if you didn't realize it at the time. All those conversations about the business, all those questions about what you were learning in school, he was training you, Savannah. Making sure you'd be ready when the time came. I thought about my father, working those 80-hour weeks, building a case against his own siblings while they plotted to steal everything from his daughter. The loneliness of that. The weight of it. Thank you for telling me, I said. Thank me by finishing what he started, Janet replied. Make them pay for what they did to him. To your mother. To you. I intended to. The Blake Development Corporation held its annual shareholder meeting every March, in the grand ballroom of the Adolphus Hotel in downtown Dallas. It was part business, part social event, 300 guests in formal attire, a string quartet, past hors d'oeuvres, and a carefully choreographed presentation designed to reassure investors that their money was in capable hands. This year, Gloria had planned something special. She'd spent the months since my father's death lobbying the board, schmoozing major shareholders, and building support for a motion to remove me from any management role before I could officially take my seat. The will contest was still winding through the courts, but Gloria wasn't waiting. She intended to have me declared unsuitable by shareholder vote, effectively stripping me of any power regardless of what the probate judge eventually decided. I knew this because Victoria had people inside Gloria's inner circle. I knew the exact wording of the motion, the names of everyone who'd agreed to support it, and the precise moment in the evening when Gloria planned to call for the vote. What Gloria didn't know was that I'd spent the past 3 months doing more than just gathering evidence. I'd been making allies. The Blake family owned the largest share of Blake Development, but not a majority. 43% of the company belonged to outside investors, pension funds, and longtime partners who'd trusted Harold Blake's judgment for decades. Many of them had grown uncomfortable with Gloria and Raymond's management style. Several had noticed the inflated contracts, the questionable expenses, the steady decline in profit margins despite a booming real estate market. They just hadn't had anyone to rally behind. Until now. The shareholder meeting started at 7. By 8:30, Gloria was ready to make her move. Before we conclude tonight's formal business, she announced, taking the microphone with the practiced ease of someone who'd spent her life commanding rooms, I'd like to address a matter of significant concern to this board and to all stakeholders in Blake Development. She paused for effect, her gaze sweeping the ballroom before landing on me. As many of you know, my brother William passed away unexpectedly 6 months ago. His loss was devastating to our family and to this company. Gloria dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief, a nice touch, I had to admit. William was a brilliant businessman, but in his final years, he became troubled, isolated, prone to making decisions that, frankly, puzzled those of us who knew him best. She straightened her shoulders. Chief among those decisions was his choice of successor. My niece, Savannah, is a lovely young woman. But she has no experience in real estate, no business education, and no understanding of the complex operations that make Blake Development successful. Placing her in a leadership role would be irresponsible to our shareholders, our employees, and to the legacy my parents spent their lives building. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I saw Raymond nodding gravely from his seat at the head table. Their adult children wore expressions of rehearsed concern. Therefore, Gloria continued, I am calling for a vote of no confidence in Savannah Blake's fitness to serve in any management capacity. I move that the board appoint Raymond and myself as interim co-directors until such time as a proper succession plan can be established. I second the motion, Raymond called out, right on cue. Gloria smiled. The motion has been made and seconded. I call for a voice vote. Actually, I said, standing up from my table near the back of the room, I'd like to speak before we vote. If that's allowed. Gloria's smile flickered. This wasn't in her script. Savannah, dear, I don't think that's. Shareholders have the right to address the assembly before any vote. I walked toward the front of the room, my heels clicking against the marble floor. That's in the corporate bylaws. Section 4.7. I checked. Gregory Mitchell, who was officiating, nodded reluctantly. She's correct. Miss Blake, you have the floor. 300 faces turned toward me. I could feel Gloria's fury from across the room, hot and sharp as a blade. I took the microphone. Good evening. For those who don't know me, I'm Savannah Blake. William Blake was my father. Daniela Reyes Blake was my mother. And for the past 26 years, half of this room has treated me like an embarrassment to be hidden away. A ripple of discomfort moved through the crowd. I kept going. My aunt just called my father troubled and isolated. She suggested he wasn't thinking clearly when he chose me as his successor. I'd like to offer an alternative explanation. I pulled a folder from my bag. My father chose me because he knew what Gloria and Raymond were doing to his parents' company. And he knew I was the only person who would actually stop them. Gloria's face went white. What are you? I'm talking about the $2 million in personal expenses you billed to Blake Development over the past decade, Aunt Gloria. Private school tuition for your grandchildren. Salaries for your household staff. A complete renovation of your guest house in Vale. I held up the printouts. All categorized as client entertainment. All approved by your brother Raymond without board oversight. The murmurs were getting louder now. Raymond was on his feet. This is outrageous. You can't just. I'm also talking about the $11 million in inflated contracts you steered to companies owned by your personal associates, Uncle Raymond. 40% above market rate, on average. That's not bad judgment. That's fraud. These accusations are completely baseless. Actually, they're extremely well documented. I pulled out my phone and nodded to someone at the AV booth. The screens around the ballroom flickered to life, displaying spreadsheets, emails, and contract comparisons. My father kept records. Detailed records. And for the past 3 months, a forensic accounting team has been verifying every single entry. The ballroom had gone silent. On the screens, numbers scrolled past, damning, irrefutable numbers. You called me unsuitable, I said, looking directly at Gloria. You called my mother a gold digger and me an accident. You spent my entire life trying to make me feel like I don't belong in this family. I set down the folder. But here's what you forgot, I don't need to belong to your family. I just need to own a third of your company. And right now, I have enough evidence to file criminal fraud charges against both of you. Gloria's mouth opened and closed. No sound came out. So here's what's going to happen, I continued. You're going to withdraw your motion. You're going to resign from the board, both of you, effective immediately. You're going to repay every dollar you've stolen, with interest. And in exchange, I won't forward this evidence to the district attorney's office. You can't, Raymond started. I can. I will. And I have about 200 witnesses watching me do it. I turned to face the crowd, for the shareholders in this room who've been concerned about declining margins and questionable management. I understand your hesitation about me. I'm young. I'm inexperienced. I'm not what you expected. I paused, letting the silence stretch. But I'm also not a thief. I'm not going to steal from this company or from you. My father built Blake Development into what it is today while his siblings treated it like their personal bank account. I intend to honor his legacy by running this company the way my grandfather would have wanted. With integrity, with transparency, and with respect for everyone who's invested their trust in the Blake name. I looked back at Gloria, who had aged 10 years in the past 5 minutes. The choice is yours, Aunt Gloria. Resign quietly, or I make that phone call. The longest 30 seconds of my life passed. Then Gloria picked up her bag, grabbed Raymond's arm, and walked out of the ballroom without another word. That was 8 months ago. The will contest was dismissed in April, after Gloria's lawyers quietly advised her that pursuing it would only lead to more scrutiny of her financial activities. She and Raymond repaid $9 million to Blake Development, not the full amount they'd stolen, but enough to avoid prosecution. Raymond sold his house in University Park and moved to Arizona. I hear he's selling timeshares now. Gloria still lives in Dallas, but she's been quietly removed from every charity board and social committee that once defined her existence. Last month, someone told me they saw her at a grocery store in Plano, using coupons. I don't feel sorry for her. I do feel sorry for my cousins, some of whom had no idea what their parents were doing. I've reached out to a few of them. Most haven't responded. One, Raymond's youngest daughter, who always seemed uncomfortable at family gatherings, sent me a text that said simply, "Thank you." He was terrible to my mom too. As for me, I'm still learning. I hired a COO with 30 years of experience to handle day-to-day operations while I get up to speed. I'm taking night classes in real estate finance. I've moved into my father's old office, where I can see the photo of him and my mother on their wedding day every time I look up from my desk. My mother is wearing a simple white dress she made herself. My father is looking at her like she's the most precious thing in the world. The Blake family never understood what they had in my father. They never valued his loyalty, his work ethic, his quiet determination to do right by the people he loved. But I understand. And every day, I try to be worthy of the faith he placed in me. Last week, I visited my parents' graves. They're buried side by side in a small cemetery outside Austin, far from the Blake family mausoleum that Gloria guards like a dragon hoarding gold. I brought flowers, yellow roses for my mother, white lilies for my father. I did it, Dad, I said, kneeling on the grass. They came for me, just like you said they would. And I was ready. The wind stirred the trees overhead. Somewhere in the distance, a mockingbird was singing. I wish you could see it, I continued. The company's doing well. The board actually listens to me now. And Gloria. I smiled. Gloria doesn't call me the help's daughter anymore. Actually, Gloria doesn't call me anything. I think she's afraid to. I placed the flowers carefully between the headstones. I miss you both. Every day. But I'm okay. Better than okay. I stood, brushing grass from my knees. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. The mockingbird kept singing as I walked back to my car, a new one now, though still modest by Blake family standards. Some people inherit money. Some people inherit property. I inherited something better, the knowledge that I come from people who built their lives through hard work, through love, through refusing to let anyone define their worth. The Blakes thought they could take that from me. They were wrong. Have you ever faced people who underestimated you because of where you came from? Share your story in the comments. And if this resonated with you, subscribe for more real stories about justice, resilience, and the comebacks no one saw coming.